I think we're missing Karen.
I don't see anybody.
I
Yeah.
think Jennifer needs to start the video. We're not.
Yeah, we haven't started our video yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
Interviewees.
Yeah.
It tells me that I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it.
Right. I think we're all in the same spot, Joanne. There we go.
Yeah, we're hooked up.
Okay, Katie, is this going to work with one interviewee at a time?
I think Jen is going to pull them in. I think we're still waiting for Karen.
Somebody's got their hand up. Is it Karen?
Let's see, hang on just a minute.
Anita, she's one of the ones.
Yes.
Nice shirt, Emerson.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm not seeing Karen.
Okay. We're still not seeing Karen, but we're checking on it.
Who are the others? Michael picture.
Yeah.
There's Michael picture. Do you think that's Megan Haynes? That's, yeah. And then is this Megan?
Yeah.
Okay. And why don't you guys go ahead and get started with this one? This for Karen.
Karen.
I don't
Okay.
have her call it for.
But we're here.
Yeah.
Okay. Mayor, we have the board and commission interviewees, but we're still, Karen's still missing. So
I'm gonna check on her.
we're checking on her this 1 minute. Okay. Mayor, if you want to go ahead, Jennifer's going to call Karen.
Okay, I think we should go ahead. I want to welcome the 4 folks who are here to interview. I'm presuming you can hear me, and what we'll do is visit with each of you separately, ask you why you've applied to be on the board that you've applied to, which I think is the library board in all cases except for one. Tell us why you've applied and what you might bring to the table. And the first one on there was Anita Radcliffe. Anita, can you introduce yourself and tell us what you'll bring to the library board?
Sure. My name's Anita Radcliffe. I've lived in Webster Groves for 18 years. I currently work at Maryville University, and prior to that, I worked at Washington University. I'm a big advocate of the library because the libraries not only help build community, but they provide access and promote literacy, which are all things that are near and dear to my heart because I worked in higher education for over 21 years or so. And I think what I could bring to the table is I'm ready to be engaged in the community. So I would have that kind of excitement, as you will, or just wanting to help develop strategies that could ensure the longevity of Webster Groves and the library system.
Right. Does anyone have a question for Anita? Okay,
No?
Anita, thank you very, very much.
I like your background, Anita.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, see, we couldn't be, thank you for noticing. Couldn't be at the
That's good.
library, but I think I'm at the library. So.
Perfect.
I'm
All
sorry to,
right. Ed Scholl, we're going to ask you the same thing, why you've applied and what you'll bring.
Ed, can I interject just before you start? I just got a text from Karen who doesn't have the link. So could Jennifer or Katie send her a copy of that link, please?
Yes, Jennifer's working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I apologize for interrupting, Ed.
No, that's fine. Ed, tell us.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I just retired in December of last year after spending 47 years in banking and education. I was an adjunct at Fontbonne University in the graduate school program. My wife and I moved to Webster Groves 8.5 years ago. We're both retired. We're avid readers. We are amateur writers. I believe that a library is the crown jewel of any local municipality. We love to read. We love to visit the library. It provides us with literacy. It provides us with literature, with any opportunity to gain knowledge. I have the time now to dedicate myself to volunteering. And I think that I could bring, and in addition to my love for reading and writing, 7.5 years in managing in the banking industry and 6 years, 6 of that in private enterprise, serving on boards. I think that the success of any successful board is its diversity and its people and in their backgrounds and their ability to listen. And I would do everything in my power to promote and continue to promote the success of the Webster Groves Public Library.
Thank you, Ed. Does anybody have a question for Ed?
Yes, Ed, good to meet you. Thank you for applying. So would you, I know you've been 47 years in finance, would you be willing to spend a couple more assisting the library with financial related tasks?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to save Michael for last. Megan, same thing.
I moved to Webster about 5 years ago from St. Charles. I volunteered in St. Charles at the City County Library there. And I actually have a master's in library science. I do not currently work in a library, but I did do a practicum and I've worked in school libraries. And I just have been looking for a way to kind of volunteer and serve this community. I have some other volunteer experience. I'm on the Zoo Young Professionals Board. I've been on that board this is my 5th year. So I've been on the exec board. I've served on committees. I've done a lot of event planning, a lot of fundraising. So I bring a lot of that knowledge to the table.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question for Megan? All right, Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
You originally applied for the library, but you are also interested in the Planning Commission. And you tell us a little bit about your background as an engineer.
Yes, ma'am. I lived in Webster now for 23 years. I spent several years actually on the board of zoning adjustment. So when this position came open, it was forwarded to me by friends, the library board that is, as something they thought I'd be interested in, and I certainly was. When I guess Debbie Salberg had reached out, mentioned that city planning positions open. So my career as an engineer is the last several years, 15 or so with the Metropolitan Sewer District. And in that position, and before that, consulting. So I've worked both on the private and the public side. So I've been on both sides of those city council meetings trying to get a development approved. And of course, with Board of Zoning Adjustment, and also within the sewer district, I worked in our plan review group. So working with the planners at all the municipalities in the area to get developments approved and plans approved. And with the Board of Zoning Adjustment, quickly realizing, and not to be rude to anybody, but not many people on that board could actually read a set of construction plans, understand what a contour line was. So thanks to Debbie's, I guess, comment that position was also open. I expressed interest in both positions. And so the engineer and just a lot of volunteering through professional societies. Just finished a term as president of St. Louis chapter, Missouri Side Professional Engineer. I've been with the scout leader up at Redeemer for about a decade. Two of my boys are Eagle Scouts. So, oldest one just graduated with a degree in English, actually. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Does anybody have a question for Michael? So you are willing to serve on the Plans Commission?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I think that does it for us for our interviews this evening. Katie has asked for the library that we hold off on appointments. We have wonderful candidates for the library board. This is hard, it's tough, so we'll see.
Well,
Thank
and
you.
I was just going to say, Mayor, there's openings in other boards and commissions. And so if they're interested in, regardless of what the decision this council goes with, I would hope that they would seek out those other boards and positions as well, or boards and commissions.
David. Thanks, David. Yes.
Thanks, David.
All right, and with that in mind, I think we'll say goodbye to our, you're welcome to stay and listen, but we're going to go on with our agenda. Is there anything on the regular agenda that needs to be reviewed? If not, we're going to go to our meeting issues and updates. And does anyone have an update that they want to share? Pam.
Hi, I attended 3 meetings since our last meeting, so I just thought I would review those if you guys don't mind listening. The library board meeting occurred and they discussed writing a statement in light of the George Floyd and the racism that's been at the top of everyone's mind lately. So they talked about writing a statement similar to what the St. Louis Public Library has done. They're tabling that for the next time. Staff has gathered materials about diversity and anti-racism and other resources and put those in the forefront of the library. They also talked about including ways to highlight authors of color. And they've also talked about providing training for staff so they feel supported and ready to talk to the community about anti-racism. They're $30,000 under budget with 1 month left to go. They talked about the Illuminate sign mock-up that is underway. We talked about the 2 board vacancies. The treasurer is currently going to become president, so that's the need for someone new with a financial background. The ARB met last week, and they've been meeting every week since COVID, but this time they worked together remotely and with staff and they came to a consensus on the home that was in the public hearing and 7 remaining homes. So they were able to approve the projects and cancel the meeting from last week. So that's a good thing that they are so efficient. And then also of note, I asked Mara about the new homes just to see how that had been going. And between February 1st and June 30th, 14 applications for new homes have been approved and 3 more in July. And then lastly, last night at the Plan Commission, Mara presented a brief PowerPoint and initiated discussion about the zoning text amendments in residential zoning. So this is a result of our housing goals and action plan that we talked about last fall and last winter. That's it.
Thanks, Pam, for all your work. Would anyone else have an update?
Mayor, I don't have an update, but the St. Louis Gym Center, Harry Cheatham, the president of the board, he invited me to come view their center. And I'm going to do that either Thursday or Friday. So he extended the entire invitation, to the entire council with like me. So I am going to go visit with them either this Thursday or Friday to they want to show me around their center.
Thank you. Good. Anything else? Lee Zimboski is going to send us very soon a schedule for the search manager process, and very soon we will get a profile when he finishes his conversations with all the stakeholders. So I expect that to come in the next week or so from him, and then we'll have an opportunity to review all of that. All right, then we're going to move on to our next topic here, which is the review of the student and other concerns and demands. And so we'll start first with the list that came from our students of the student demands. And I think Laura and Emerson forwarded that list to us. There are a number of things in there that we can take a look at. Trying to get back to where the list is here.
Mayor, while you're looking for the list, may I make one comment?
Yes, please.
I just think it would be appropriate as we begin this discussion to take a minute to acknowledge how hard these young people worked on the event at Blackburn Park and how brave they were to so honestly share some really difficult experiences that they have had in our community. And yes, we need to talk about the specifics, but I didn't want us to dive into the details without really acknowledging and valuing the contribution they've made to this conversation for our entire community.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Has everyone found their list?
Yes.
Yes. I believe the first section of, I'm still looking for mine, but that's all right.
Page 15
of
the work session PDF.
All right. Thank you. Here we go. Thank you. Thanks, Pam.
You're welcome.
There are a number of issues in here that were police related. And I believe that police chief has seen these. He is there on our Zoom. Are there any questions or comments about that list?
Since many of us have talked with the chief about what's on that list and some of the things, and it certainly was something that has been in front of the Police Community Engagement Board. But I'm not sure, we have, some 40 people listening right now. I'm not sure that everyone who is on understands what our department is doing on this front. And you may have intended this, but I would like, if Dale could, to comment a little bit on what some of these policies are that are already enacted in our police department. I know what the Police Community Engagement Board is working on and things like that.
All right, Dale, do you want to make some comments?
Well, I mean, I can speak to the use of force and conduct policies if you'd like me to do that. It's
please.
they're on the city's website for anybody who'd like to read them. They're fairly extensive and detailed. All of the 8 pillars that there were some inquiries about and some concerns about. Our policies have covered all of those since 2004. We don't allow any types of chokeholds, any type of restraint that would cause an issue with respiratory systems. We have a use of continuum. We have a policy for reporting use of force. We track the use of forces. I think I've provided some written documentation. We did a 5-year study on citizen contacts. We had 172,000 citizen contacts over a 5-year period. Of those 172,000 contacts, we only had 28 citizen complaints. 3 of those were sustained and were disciplined. We made almost 5,000 arrests over a 6-year period in the 2020 year to date. Of those, we've only had 99 uses of force. And of those 99 uses of force, only 66 were incidents in which suspects were injured. All of those are minor, except for 2. One of them where an officer struggled with the suspect, and the suspect was shot with his own weapon. And then the second one was the incident which you saw earlier on I-44. We're working hard with the with the Police Community Engagement Board on analyzing our stop data. I know that was a concern, as one of the things that the board immediately took up. We've reduced our numbers for this year on the report. They're not where we would like for them to be, but as we discussed with the board, there's a lot of issues aside from the demographics of the city that play into that. But we've also reduced our enforcement on the highway about 76% in the last 6 months and 20% over last year, which was accounting for a lot of it. Our ratio went down from 3.8 in 2018 to 2.13 this year for resident-only stops. Again, the policies will require a lot of explanation. They're pretty detailed, but anybody can find them on the website. We have the 3 most important policies that cover the 8 pillars on the website now. And I can answer any questions about them. Most of them I know, but some of the detail I might have to check on.
Great. You can go to the website and find the summary given by the police chief. You can go to the Police Community Engagement Board and find their statement of condemnation. And of course, Dale is always open to questions and explanations of police policies. And we will attempt to try to continue to put those out there in an easily digestible manner. So I don't know if any council member has any questions of this.
I would, Dale, if you wouldn't mind, please. One of the things that the students asked about was de-escalation
Yes.
training. And if you could talk a little bit about de-escalation. And then I think it's related to one thing that I didn't know about that I think, well, I didn't know very much about it, but is worth explaining as well, which is the use of force continuum that is standard policy in the department, and how that's related to de-escalation as well.
That's correct. But as far as the use of force continuum goes, it's, obviously the officers can enter it at any stage, but our goal is first to concern than it is for criminal justice system application. So we always try, the officers always try to de-escalate a situation and not get into a use of force issue. We have training, there's classes like verbal judo, the CIT classes, that's a 40-hour class, criminal critical incident training, where de-escalation is taught. There's a number of classes where within an 8-hour block or a 24-hour block, that's de-escalation techniques are taught. We teach that in service here at the police department. And again, it's one of the things I think which shows in our record that less than 2% of our arrests are necessary. Do we have use of force where it's necessary? We've only had 1 citizen complaint on excessive use of force in the last 7 years, I believe from 2012. That was for a pepper mace, and we investigated that, and a witness confirmed that this person was resisting arrest. So all the training geared toward how the officers react and behave is to de-escalate it, is to not get into a confrontation. None of the officers want or enjoy going hands-on with anyone. In those instances where they do, the vast majority are strictly hands-on. Our use of force reports, and like I said, we had 99 use of force reports, but the majority of those are something where somebody wasn't really seriously resisting, but the officer had put hands on. A hands-on is considered a use of force, so that's part of that percentage. If an officer draws a taser or a weapon, whether they use it or not, that's considered a use of force. That also goes into that. So I think our record on the use of force speaks to the fact that the officers are well trained. We have over last year 2,400 hours of training. A lot of that was on use of force and de-escalation training. So again, it's one of the things that we work hard on. It's one of the things that we bring out with the Police Community Engagement Board. We are as transparent as we possibly can be so that the community can be confident that we're doing things the way that they should be. We very rarely in the use of force continuum do we have to escalate beyond hands-on where they're handcuffing someone. There's very few use of pepper spray or taser, for example.
Thank you.
One of the things I meant to should have mentioned was one of their concerns was for the hiring of officers. We have a very extensive process for officers. We have a written examination, an oral board, and then there's a thorough background. Usually takes 2 to 3 weeks. After the background, and in all cases, if for instance it's a former police officer, we go to another department or agency that they were at and look at their personnel records. After we've done all that and everything looks good, we send the person for a psychological assessment. Only if the psychological assessment comes back positive do we go on to a medical assessment to make sure they're physically fit. We do everything possible. It's very exhaustive to make sure that we don't hire anyone who isn't going to respect our policies or meet the expectations of the community.
Thank you.
Chief, I was going to just add, that was going to be my question in regards to the hiring. But how about the retention of police officers? Is there any continued psychological evaluation as to currently employed officers?
Well, we have an EAP program. I shouldn't say only, if an officer is having an issue, and it's rare, there have been instances where we have made EAP mandatory, where they have to go to an EAP session. But again, that's something that's very rare. We've had very few discipline issues. Officers are human like anybody else, so we've got 47 employees. Occasionally things are going to happen, unfortunately. Our hiring pool is the human race. So our goal is perfection, but we know we can't be perfect. When we find an issue, we certainly address it. We have used EAP in the past, like I said, mandatorily for issues, but they've almost always been minor issues. If we have somebody, again, it's rare, who's had a serious issue, we don't feel the community to be confident in, we have either they've not gotten off of probation, which is usually what the case is before they become a regular officer, or in very, very few instances, there have been officers who have engaged in some kind of conduct that was inappropriate and it was necessary to not retain them. But again, that's very rare. And part of that, again, is because of our hiring policies. We have a training manual. We have a field training officer for each new employee, and they go through a 40-hour class for field training. So everything we do in terms of the hiring process, just to get them on and then getting them through the 12-week FDO, we have a very good idea of what kind of person they are. And again, if we don't feel like they can be a good employee or good officer, they don't make it off of probation.
Chief, you were referring to? What did you say? EAP?
The Employee Assistance Program. It's for it's available to all city employees.
Okay.
Anything else?
Chief,
Mayor.
Chief, this is Neil. You might want to explain to the council what would happen in the event that someone had to terminate employment because of misconduct and the effect on post.
And again, in the very rare instances that we've had, it's a statute that requires it. I would think that every police department is doing that now, but I can only speak for us. We're required when we terminate somebody for cause for whatever the reason is that we notify post of what the incident is, we have 30 days, but it's always before 30 days. Whenever we do that, we send a notice to post, tell them what the issues are, and then it's up to post to whether or not they want to discipline their certification. In most cases, again, things are even though they may require termination, in general, unless it's a crime, post will either put them on probation or sanction them for a limited period of time. There are
What is
cases.
post? Tell
It's
us
the peace officer standards and training for the state of Missouri. And the post commission is the one that grants certifications for police officers. There was a time, and I know people probably still think that it occurs, and to some extent it does, but not very often, when officers would leave one department and go to another department after something bad happened. But with the new requirements, new statutes, and with almost everybody being on board, making sure that we don't have those kind of officers, I think there's probably very few officers that once they've committed some kind of offense that's serious, that they can't get certified through post.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to recommend that we take these 6 items that are on this demands list that we received from the students and make sure that we answer their questions, review, for example, de-escalation training. Just look at the process, describe the process to the community so they'll know what we're looking at, and see if there's any room for improvement. And for transparency, let them know that we are taking this seriously and that we're going to look at each and every item.
Emerson, in your mind, what does that entail? Does that mean like something that we write, the PowerPoint presentation and a website? I just want to know what you're thinking.
Well, let's just take the de-escalation training program. You know, if we already have one on board, I believe we need to review it, see if there's any way that it needs to be improved, explained differently so that the community can understand. Yes, we can do it by PowerPoint, we can do it by putting it on the website or a letter out to the community. Whatever way is feasible to get that information back, that we are taking this list of demands seriously.
I think right now, and Dale and Jerry, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, the Police Community Engagement Board is working on their own more enhanced commission website where they provide some information to the public. And certainly a number of these could provide guidance for some of the informational pieces that go up on that website. Because yes, we should respond to the students. I agree, whether it's by letter or some sort of meeting or presentation. But you know, these are broader things that our community wants to know, not just the students. So I do agree, Emerson.
So let's make they don't have their own website. None of because every board and commission then would have its own website. But what we do have is every board and commission has a page, which means a place where you can go. And yes, we are working on the Police Community Engagement Board, quote unquote, page. And this is something that perhaps we can bring up with the meeting next week. Good. All right, I'm going to move on a little bit because of the time. I sent you all a proposal for a community-wide conversation. And part of that comes from the section of the students' list that talks about community members and what we must do as community members. And I sent you all a proposal that we engage in community conversations, community listening, community discussions over the next couple of months. I want to talk about that a little bit. I've talked to a couple of the council members who would very much like to be involved with this. And I think if we can move forward, I'd like to see us have a small committee of council members who can take this proposal and refine it. One of you said 4 months is too long to talk. And there are just some other pieces in here that maybe we need to address. There are some simple action items that we could do and not wait until January. So I think the best thing to do with this piece, if you're all in agreement, is to have a couple of you join me and the partners that have already agreed to work with us. Webster University has resources, facilitators. The school district is happy to work with us, and the North Webster Neighborhood Coalition can all partner with us for a robust community conversation process. So if I can have one or two of you, if we find this agreeable, to join me, I would like that, and we can put some refinement in this for the next council meeting and moving forward.
Well, Mayor, you know,
I know you're with me. Right.
And one thing I would like to say also with us addressing these equity issues, it's important that we start on our level at the council level, that we also go through some type of equity training or social justice training to make sure that we are knowledgeable on issues that's facing our African-American citizens, or Black citizens, and the community.
Well, and Emerson, I'm just going to, I second that request. And I also think it's important for the entire city staff, especially those in leadership positions, to be doing the exact same thing.
Yes, I agree.
I will add, and Mayor, we've talked today, I very much want to be a part of this process. And I would, strongly urge that we really ground this in thinking about what is the outcome we want. And I think we define the outcome we want in our diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And that really has to govern how we move forward, so that there is an end goal that we all as a community are reaching, and that we recognize that this isn't something that we're going to talk about for a few months and act some policies and then we'll be finished. It really is about changing how we think about the job we do and how our staff thinks about the job they do, so that this is part of your decision-making process all the time.
I think that statement really is the umbrella for all of this. Karen, you had something you wanted to add?
Well, and I just think that we need to be clear that this is going to be an uncomfortable process.
Yes.
Because if we're going to have honest conversation, and we're trying to address real issues and have productive outcomes, then, the whole format, it's going to have to involve people being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because if we're going to have honest conversation, then, people, you can't, you may take it personally, you may not, but it's not a personal attack. It needs, if we're going to listen, we need to listen and be prepared to hear and at least acknowledge what people are trying to communicate.
And I would add to that too, that I think there's got to be some amount of accountability on the other side of the listening. I think that's a concern that some of us have had over the last couple of years, is that we've asked people to share their experiences and their frankly their heartbreaks and their the difficult things they've experienced in Webster, and we haven't done a whole lot with that after we listened to them. And I am hesitant to kind of jump into another round of listening if we aren't going to really truly commit to making some changes on the other side of the listening.
I think the difference, Sarah, is at this time this is a citywide project. And it puts our feet to the fire, because we are the ones who are leading that project. We are the ones who are listening, the ones who can actually make some sort of change occur. And I think that's what the big difference is this time. I hope so. I hope so. And I hope people will understand. We want to start out with a clean slate. I'm hoping, Karen, to speak to your concerns, that perhaps through the university, we can get a couple of skilled facilitators who will help us work our way through what I anticipate really will be difficult conversations. I agree with you.
Well, Mayor, I just wanted to ask, I mean, I think that the school district obviously has to be involved in the conversation, but for them to be a leader in our conversation seems inappropriate to me, in the essence that they themselves are wrestling with their own concerns. obviously anything that we do in the city and anything the school district does affects each other. I think there's a symbiotic relationship. But I don't, and as much as I admire Dr. Simpson, I don't know if he's, or the school district itself, is the appropriate entity or the appropriate individuals to be, quote unquote, a moderator or a facilitator of this discussion.
I see them as our partners, just as Webster University is a partner. They have resources that they can bring to the table on our behalf. And the school district can help us reach a youthful group, reach the students, to listen to the students. I see us, we are actually leading this conversation. They are our partners in this discussion.
And
I think it's important that we
absolutely
don't work in silos
right.
in this process, that we work with each other as partners.
Yes.
And I agree that the school district absolutely needs to be engaged as a partner in this because the issues occur in that environment as well. So we're having this conversation as an entire community. And so I agree that there's partnerships here.
Would it not be worthwhile to look at skilled facilitators to outside of our own community, so they don't bring in that baggage, for lack of a better word, of association with community members in any way? We certainly have a lot of people in the St. Louis region who are very good at leading these difficult conversations in a variety of venues, and I guess I would feel a little better about it if we had that kind of additional layer of accountability of someone kind of checking the process as we go, so that it's not us kind of setting the rules and listening to the conversations. It's really we're there to listen, we're there to take the action items, but we're not also the ones to facilitate.
I think you've hit a very good point. I think you're right. If we can find outside facilitators, I think you're right. That would be ideal for us. All right, we are at 7:30. I know that Emerson and Laura have agreed to join me on some group committee, whatever we want to call it. Is there anybody else who wants to join us?
I'd like to, Mayor.
All of you.
That's good.
That's good.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I'm happy to join too, but I think I'm also willing to, I definitely have my own opinions and my own experiences.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard anything that I disagree with right now. So I, I'm willing to let you all
do
take
it
the lead and make some decisions. Yeah. And so,
Okay.
I'm all in.
All right. Well, then we might just have a special meeting. Katie will talk about this somehow tomorrow, about how we can get a special meeting put together with the majority of the council members. We'll just notice that and go from there.
Okay.
All right, we are at 7:34 and I'm cognizant of the time tonight. And so now I need to ask you, Katie, do we have to get out of this and get back into something else now?
No, we can move on if we could have maybe a 2-minute break. So
yes, we can.
Bring a few people on and maybe take a little restroom break.
We will do that. 5 minutes, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
And Laura.
Yeah.
I'm asking you, what's in your ceiling?
It's a bunk bed. I'm in Andy's room. So I am not in a very good office. I am in a what works office.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah. No, this guy is not falling.
I thought it was a boat.
Oh.
Okay, I'm gonna close this up and run. Okay, we need a few people to come back. All right, I think we have everyone here to begin our regular council meeting, which I want to call to order. As you know, the remarks of visitors needed to be submitted, and I understand we have quite a few of them, some of which probably will go into the public hearing information. And we do have quite a few of them. And Katie, I think as you read them in, probably the first 3 minutes, beyond 3 minutes, we probably won't go there, right?
Correct. We have
To
several
sum up-
for the public hearing and then a few for the regular remarks to visitors.
Okay, let's go ahead. So let's begin with a roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Welsh?
Here.
Councilmember Arnold?
Here.
Councilmember Bliss?
Here.
Councilmember Franklin?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Alexander?
Here.
Councilmember Richardson?
Here.
All right, our first agenda item is a public hearing, and I'd like to call this public hearing to be opened. It is a public hearing concerning 630 South Elm Avenue Wireless Communications Facility. It's an application by DRA Properties LLC for a conditional use permit to install 9 cellular antennas atop an existing light pole as an accessory utility use at Mossfield at 630 South Elm Avenue. And so we'll open that up, and I think it's Mara, are you on? Yeah, there you are. Mara, you get to open this up.
Me first. I'm waiting. Jennifer's up. There she goes. She's sharing my ability to share my screen.
Here we go.
So thank you. This evening, typically I'm standing in front of all of you at the podium. I'm going to go through a PowerPoint presentation, which is what I would typically do at a council meeting. I'm going to go through, it's a request for a conditional use permit for a wireless communications facility. The cell tower request that is before you has gone through the Plan Commission, and what I'm going to be doing is going through and revisiting all the elements that the Plan Commission reviewed, talking through with you about their findings of fact, and then discussing what staff's recommendations would be. So I'm going to start first with the zoning of the property. The property is zoned in A4 7,500 square foot residence district. The surrounding zoning is also A4 7,500 square foot residence district. To the south is Memorial Park and the athletic and recreation facilities for the city. To the west is Hickson Middle School and Moss Field. To the east and to the north are single family residential structures. You can see the existing conditions here. There are images of the existing pole, which is a light structure for the football field itself, as well as the existing shelter that is to the south of it. There's also a platform that has remained on the top of the structure. When I talk about the history, I'll talk a little bit about that. We always review when something comes through. It's not a change of zoning, so because it is not a change of zoning, this is not as important, but it is still important that the primary use of the site is remaining as a public institutional community use, which is the property of the school district. The request that's before the City Council is for a conditional use, which goes on top of the existing primary use of the property. This is a pretty complex set of bullet points, but I do want to go through briefly the history on the property. Hickson Middle School was built in 1955. There were additions in 1990, 1996, and for those that have driven by recently, there's a pretty extensive addition going on right now in 2020. Moss Field itself was built actually prior to the middle school in 1946, according to the school district's website. The stadium, the lights, and the track were added to that field between 1978 and 1984. In 2004, there was a variance before the City of Webster Groves to allow the first, what we would call a stealth cell tower at the light pole located to the north, not the pole that's in question this evening. But it was on a request for a variance, a use variance before Board of Adjustment, and that use variance was approved. A second use variance came before the Board of Adjustment in 2005 for a second cell tower at the current subject light pole. That variance was denied by the Board of Adjustment. We did find that they applied again a short time later and withdrew their application. And then, according to the records that we were able to find, in 2008, a permit was issued for the cell tower to be built, for the light fixture to be built along with the structure, but we couldn't find any documentation about the overturning of the variance denial. In 2014, a demolition permit was issued to remove all the antennas, the radio, the cables from the light pole, as well as from the structure itself, only leaving the platform in place. What that means is that the use that had been on there for a number of years was no longer a non-conforming use on the site, and it has been withdrawn for more than 1 year, which is the reason why it is required to go before the council to get approval for a conditional use permit. When we go before the council, and I normally don't read these in detail, but I know we have new council members on, so I'm going to read those in detail for you. The conditional use permit process requires you to determine whether the proposed wireless communication facility use will not substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion, substantially increase fire hazards, adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, adversely affect the general welfare of the community, or overtax public utilities. And I want to focus on the use itself and what we are able to determine when it comes to different facilities that might also have an impact on other laws at the state or federal level. So we focus on what we can approve or what we can review to approve at our level. The other thing that's very important to note is, although it goes through a conditional use permit process and procedure, we have a very specific wireless communication facilities ordinance. And that ordinance was put in place because at the state level, changes were made in the last few years that were going to basically allow a very open ability for wireless communications to go pretty much on any pole within the city. So a couple years back in 2018, we made some changes into the code to still try to require as much as we could some zoning approval in regards to the physical location of where it would go, the physical size, that it couldn't go and become a large element within our right-of-way or within other areas of the city. And so there were a few key things that were added to that recent ordinance that talk about the design, the visual compatibility with the area, whether it was inconsistent with the regular uses in the district, as well as making sure that it complies with other general requirements of the law, building and safety code compliance. So those were important for us to also factor into our review. I'm going to go briefly through the analysis that staff had to look through. First was looking at the idea of what was the use. The use requested is 9 cellular antenna on top of an existing light standard at Moss Field. It's essentially determined that it is considered a disguised support structure, although typically you see a disguised structure as having the antennas within something where you don't see them on the top. However, the approval of the other one to the north looks similar in nature, as well as a couple others on other athletic type fields, but we try to minimize the look of it to consider it as a disguised structure. One of the elements that we are allowed to look at is color, how it impacts the rest of the area in the community, that it's not in a garish color or element that makes it stand out. So per the code, it's supposed to be painted in a neutral color that is consistent with the natural or the built environment. In this case, the light poles match one another, the ones that have the structures on top and the ones that don't have the structures on top. So trying to make sure that those stay in a neutral color and aren't painted in some other means or manner. Ground equipment, in the code, it says that they must be contained in a single shelter that has an exterior finish, again, that's compatible with the environment around it. This facility was left when they removed all the previous equipment from the previous tower facilities that had been here. The shelter did remain, and it is a sort of a fixture on the edge of the parking lot between the parking lot and Moss Field. The equipment would again go into the same facility and would require that it follow the design requirement that it stay compatible. Wiring, all wiring is supposed to be from ground mounted antennas or located, or antenna towers if they're located more than 5 feet from the nearest building. So the proposal is supposed to go, it will connect underground into the shelter. The overall design is supposed to be something, again, that is disguised in some way. And the way that the previous approval had happened on many of these other types of light standards is that it stays at a similar height and level on a platform right above the overall lights that are used to light the fields. So it is in a crow's nest and it is exposed. So they're generally not allowed when you're considering it disguised, but it would be in keeping with other ones in the same general area in their look. So they would be installing on the existing platform that is already there. And so it doesn't conform with the general idea that they are not visible. Per staff, one of the things that we thought was important, which I've kind of brought up to you already, we're trying not to significantly increase the visual degradation of the area. It had previously had them on there and it matches and is compatible with other ones on the subject property. It's not going to further distract or from the view of the surrounding area, and it's concealed as much as it can be on the existing structure in matching some of the others around the area and within this particular subject site. The overall height, the existing light pole is 90 feet above grade. The antenna is proposed to extend 93 feet above grade, which then meets the elements of the code, and it does not exceed the height requirements in the district. The code requires landscaping. Obviously, putting some landscaping at the bottom of this light fixture is not going to hide anything. Typically, that's what it's intended to do. So we did not feel that it was important to try to, quote, disguise it by putting a bunch of landscaping at the bottom, which wasn't really going to do anything in the overall, and I think would cause some issues with the operation of how the field operates and their maintenance of the overall field environment. Per the code, the disguised support structures have to have that are near a public or private parking lot might be exempted from setbacks. One of the things we looked at was the fall protection of where this would potentially, if there was a problem. We do get a structural study that verifies the structural capacity for what is going to go on the top of it to try to confirm that the safety measures in case it should fall are being met, or if there are any other issues with the structure. Because it's being proposed on an existing light standard, we would exempt it from having an additional setback, but it would have met all the setbacks for other elements of it in terms of the larger property. So before I go into staff recommendations, do any of the council members have any questions?
Yeah, Mara, I just had so I'm just a little confused. Who owns this property?
This is the school district's property. So the lease would be with the school district.
And has the school district approved the lease yet, do we know, or is that still on the
They
way?
have signed off on, we require them to sign off on the application before it could come before the plan commission.
Mark, so I hear a lot of reference, and again, so just bear with me because if we all know I'm new to this, but I hear a lot of reference to the aesthetics.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, yes, David, you had locked up. Sorry, was there?
Sorry. I was going to say, who has the school district approved the lease?
Yes, the school district signed off on the application. We require them to sign off on the application so that the applicant who will be leasing from the school district would have permission to apply before the plan commission.
All right. Do we, I was trying to review it and I didn't see, do we have a copy of that lease agreement?
I know we have some paperwork. We don't normally, release a lease in that manner. They would not have finalized a lease until they get usually permission for the conditional use permit, because you wouldn't want to sign a lease without already having the use being able to go in that location.
Yeah, I'm just interested, I mean, more or less what the school district and or the city's getting in return for this.
This is not, the city doesn't get anything in return for this. This is not our property and this is not our structure. So it would just be the school district's lease.
Well, yeah, that makes sense if it's the school district's property, but doesn't mean that big old AT&T can't come through for the city on something.
That would be a legal matter for Neil. When we look at use,
I'm not looking for a quid pro quo here. All I'm looking for is like, look, this is going into a visible part of the city right next to the recreation complex. And not only that, but also where the city hosts events, the school district hosts events, school district and the city use that parking lot. Just seems like it's something reasonable that AT&T would reach out to the city and, hey, we're willing to do X, Y, or Z.
I think typically there's a payment that comes with these. Am I not correct, Mara and Neil, that the school district would be receiving some sort of payment?
The school district would, yes. But we don't. And again, it's not our land. We have the right to require that it meet our zoning requirements. But beyond that, we don't have any skin in the game, and there's really no ability to take that position in terms of a bargaining position and not fall into a quid pro quo.
Okay. Karen, I think you were trying to ask some questions.
Yeah, so where does our consideration for safety come in with this? And I'm thinking of, just because I've just been one of the things that, and even reading a lot of the comments from the citizens, but this whole EMF and the impact of wireless versus fiber optics is something that I've personally been doing a lot of review and study on, and really reducing it in my own home. I'm the dork that walks around with these attached to my cell phone because I don't want Bluetooth stuff next to my head. Is this, does that come, is that part of this evaluation at all? If there's long-term health
Maura,
hazard effects?
Maura, perhaps that's one I should answer, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So the Federal Communications Act of 1934, which I thought I was going to be really smart on and bring up for everyone here, which Laura preempted me and sent me an email asking me about this particular act. But the Communications Act of 1934 is what we look to determine who has what control over the placement of cell towers, and more particularly the components for mobile wireless service, okay? So under section 332 of the 47332 of the United States Code, there are specific provisions in there that talk about where the federal government preempts, where the state government preempts, and what the rights of local government are. So in section C7 of 332, it specifically tells us what rights we have as a municipality to affect the placement, location, what have you of these things. And I want to read this to you because it's very specific. It talks about our general authority under subsection 7A, and it says, except as provided in paragraph, nothing in this chapter shall limit or affect the authority of a state or local government or instrumentality thereof or decision regarding the placement, construction, and modification. All right, so it seems to suggest that we have the power to place them, but then it goes on to limit those powers and says the regulation of the placement, construction, and modification of personal wireless service facilities by any state or local government thereof shall not reasonably discriminate among providers of functionally equivalent services. That's probably not part of the equation here, but it also says it shall not prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting the provision of personal wireless services. So we can determine the placement, location, what have you, but our decision can't ultimately mean that it would prohibit the provision of wireless services. Now you then say to yourself, well, they could put it somewhere else, but I'm still concerned about these EMS. If you look further down then, it says in subsection small I, small b, it says no state or local government or instrumentality thereof may regulate the placement, construction, and modification. I think this would be in the category of modification of personal wireless service facilities on the basis of the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions to the extent that such facilities comply with the commission regulations concerning such emissions. So what they've done here is they've said that they're the ones that are going to set these rules and regulations regarding what is an acceptable level of emission, and we can't deny it if it meets those conditions. So again, even though one of the conditions that we can look at in the decision regarding the grant of a CUP, of a conditional use permit, is safety, in this instance it says it can't be safety based on the environmental consequences of the emissions, because that is a federal question. It goes on to say if we make a decision that says we're not going to grant this, we have to put that decision in writing. It has to be based on substantial evidence in the record, and we have to actually prepare a written record. If we grant this and someone feels like they are offended by this, they do, in the Communications Act of 1934, have a remedy that says they can go to court and they can challenge. Now, the reason that this is important is that we would see, at least potentially, denials all over the place if it were up to municipalities to say, no, we don't want those emissions in our neighborhood, even if they meet federal standards. So, of course, we don't see that. And that's an important thing to remember, is that the federal emission standard control here. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and that hasn't been updated since 1934. I mean, so
I'm having trouble hearing you, Karen. I'm sorry.
and that is based on 1934. I mean, that's just, at the end of the day, we just don't have any say.
Well, we do in the original placement construction, so we can talk about one place being better than other, but our decision can't deny it in terms of prohibiting the wireless service, nor can it be based on the emissions if the emissions meet the federal standards. Okay? So that's 47 USC section 332, subsection C7B IV.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Mara, you can continue.
So the way that we put together our recommendations is we put together what would be in the conditional use permit that would govern the property. So as permits come in, we would ensure that it meets all of these elements. So the first one, all provisions of the city code shall apply except as expressly modified in this ordinance number 9125. That would verify that everything in our building codes and all of our other safety codes would apply, even if we didn't specifically list them in this ordinance. The wireless communication facility shall be constructed to appear similar in design and in the location atop the existing light standard identified in Exhibit A with a maximum of 9 total antenna. That is to confirm that they will not come back later and ask us for a total of 12 or 15 or a larger number on the top. Number 3, the wireless communications facility and disguised support structure shall be painted in a neutral color consistent with the natural or built environment of the site. All equipment servicing the facility shall be contained in a single shelter with an exterior finish compatible with the natural built environment of the site. And I know we kind of laugh, the natural built environment is a football field. Number 5, the antenna shall be attached flush to the existing platform. That's to keep it from being pulled off. Sometimes now they've started to increase the width and move them farther out off of the platform. Number 6, the height of the antenna shall not exceed 93 feet above grade. Number 7, all wiring connected to the light sources, antenna, and radio equipment shall be buried underground or ground mounted. Power shall not be provided to the structure via overhead wiring. Number 8, all necessary permits shall be applied for prior to installation, and all disturbed areas shall be restored to city standards. And the last item is this conditional use permit is personal to the owner and shall not run with the land. So if there's any additional questions for me regarding this, I'm still available, but I do know the applicant is also on and is able to now speak after I've finished all of this.
Thank you, Mara. Doug Dolan is the applicant. Doug, do you have something you'd like to say?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I do have a few words I can add. I hope everybody can hear me all right.
Go ahead.
Okay, very good. Yes, as was mentioned, this is an existing 90-foot light pole. We do have a lease agreement with the school district, and this is going to be for a 4G site. And it's designed by the radio frequency engineers to help on both coverage and capacity for the city of Webster Groves. We did get planning commission approval for this site, and it's the same type of antennas that are used on top of VJC Hospital, same type of antennas that we've entered into at Washington University for the top of residence halls. And it's the same type of antennas that we use at St. Louis University on top of their library. It's the same antennas that we use at Mercy Hospital at the top of their health facility. So we operate the site at less than 1% of what the FCC allows us to use. So these are extremely safe. They provide safety to the community through E911 enhanced communications. And they also provide enhanced communications to the school. The schools are heavy users of wireless communications. And actually, by having these antennas here, the power usage needed for the individual phones goes down. So the actual EMF that you may see from a handheld phone would actually go down by having a close tower nearby. Because the handheld phone doesn't need to reach as far in order to reach the existing site. We are, I'll be available for any questions, and we are using an existing site. It was operated by US Cellular. We're going to use the existing platform and the existing equipment building. So it would be, unless you're trained to look at this site, once it's installed, you average average resident would have no idea that it was there. So I look forward, I'm happy to address any questions or comments.
Thank you, Doug. So first we'll start and see if council members have any questions.
I do
If
have
not,
a question. I do have
yes,
a question.
go ahead.
Doug, I was just curious, where is the closest existing AT&T tower to this location?
I don't have information on the closest one. We've been asked by AT&T to locate an additional site at this location, integrate better with the existing network, both for Webster Grove's residents and Interstate 44 and neighboring businesses.
Do you know what the purpose was that they needed another one?
So the typical purpose is coverage and capacity. So coverage and capacity, this is a key site. There's a lot of traffic in this area, both on Elm Avenue, Interstate 44, school, the businesses. It's just a key site for the network.
Thank you.
That's it.
Dolan,
Go ahead, David.
Mr. Dolan, I was just wondering, why is this a 4G and not a 5G?
Yeah, these, all the macro sites are 4G, and they'll have the latest antennas and equipment. 5G is a new system that will be used mostly in much more urban areas, such as downtown St. Louis, the city of Clayton. We did a project for AT&T in the city of Clayton also. They are a completely different type of network in that they're mostly on light poles and utility poles. They're very short, about 35 feet to 40 feet in the air, and they have to be placed within a block or two of each other. So they operate in kind of a spider web type of network. Again, it's for capacity and coverage and a very high speed. It's definitely the next generation up. It'll be 100 times faster than what we have here, and designed to work with autonomous cars and all the rest of the new technologies that are coming our way.
Are you able or willing to share what the lease agreement says?
I don't have all the, when I say able to share, you mean so we do have a lease agreement signed by the superintendent of the school district. It is a 25-year term, and we do plan to be here for the long haul. And we will take ownership of the tower too and facilitate, because there is FAA and FCC items that need to be addressed on the tower. So we'll also be the management company that'll oversee that tower.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan.
Laura?
Yes, Mr. Dolan, you said, I think this is correct, that you're going to use less than 1% of what the FCC allows. I don't know what's the 1% of? I don't quite understand what that refers to.
Well, the FCC, like all AM antennas, FM antennas, all radio stations, all are regulated by the FCC. We're regulated by what spectrum that we can broadcast in, also regulated by the power levels that we are permitted to broadcast within that spectrum. So we only broadcast at 1% or less. The base of the tower or surrounding homes or surrounding schools will be the equivalent of a Wi-Fi system or a baby monitor. So it's extremely low levels at ground level.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, Katie, I believe you have some things to enter into the public record.
Yes, Mayor. Jennifer's going to start reading them in when you're ready.
Go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Our first letter is from Diane Sperber that was sent on June 27th. And it says, to Mayor Jerry Welch and the following council members, Karen Alexander, Laura Arnold, Pam Bliss, David Franklin, Sarah Richardson, and Emerson Smith. My name is Diane Sperber. I live at 164 Central Avenue here in Webster Groves. I'm concerned about the plan to install an additional 9 cell antennas on a pole at Moss Field near both the Hickson School and the Webster Groves Recreational Center. Please be patient in reading this, as I would like to explain how I learned the dangers of non-ionizing radiation. I have previously sent a similar email to many of you, but let me refresh your memory. My husband and I have already been injured by microwave radiation from a smart meter that was installed on our house in 2012, right outside our bedroom window, within 3 feet of where we slept. This is the worst place for it to be, as no one should be within 10 feet of it for any length of time. So without our knowledge, we were exposed every night for 6 years to microwave radiation. Extra info. You may question that if smart meters cause such injury, why don't we hear more about it? First, most injury is slow and is not connected to the meter. Secondly, it makes some difference depending on the material a home is made of, like brick homes are safer. Thirdly, where it is placed on the outside wall determines how dangerous it can be, but it really is a national problem that the media keeps quiet, and they are new upgrade digital meters that have not been installed everywhere. Though we had been healthy and on no medications, we both began to have health issues that doctors could find no reasons for. Dave seemingly aged overnight, and I started experiencing episodes of hives and angioedema, and we both were suffering with adrenal fatigue. The doctors decided that I must have some sort of autoimmune or mast cell disease. Dave has come down with systems similar to Parkinson's. As you may know, there is no test for Parkinson's, and they really do not know what causes it, but they do agree that it is most likely from toxins in our environment. It was only by accident that we discovered our health decline was connected to the smart meter. We at first screened the meter, and we were able to reduce the microwave radiation enough that I was able to get off medication, and my hives and angioedema went away and have not returned. Since then, we have had Amarin replace it with a mechanical meter. My husband is suffering more than me because he had also been installing Wi-Fi the last 3 years of his employment, so he was bombarded at work with microwave radiation during the day and also at night while he slept. The truth is, no one should have to go through what we did. If we had never connected our health issues to microwave radiation exposure, we most likely would not be here today. You could say it is a silent killer. It is the fact that you cannot see the damage it is doing that makes it so dangerous. Today, we have more and more individuals that are highly sensitive to any wireless technology. They will have immediate health reactions in the presence of EMFs and radio waves like a headache, heart palpitations, or a skin rash. Many of them now consider their sensitivity to EMFs and radio waves to be a lifesaver, as otherwise they would not realize the dangers until it was too late. We would be wise to consider these sensitive individuals as warning signs to the rest of us, similar to the canaries that were used to protect miners from being overcome with gas fumes before the miners had time to escape. Personally, we are concerned about the addition of these antennas because a building biologist who has inspected our home for additional EMF exposure got a high reading in our bedroom and living room coming from the present cell tower on Mossfield. There's a limit to what we can do to protect ourselves from all this new technology.
Okay.
3 minutes up. Our next email is from Patricia Toko, and that was sent on the 6th, so yesterday. I vehemently object to placing any cell phone towers at a grade school. This is endangering the children who are especially vulnerable to the EMFs that are transmitted to all people in near proximity. There are many scientific studies that prove the danger and the harm of EMFs, and there are schools that have experienced cancer in children from nearby towers. You are putting children at risk and will be held accountable if you do this and harm befalls them. Here are many references you must read and become knowledgeable about before such a decision is made. And then there's a list of many links. Right. Next one is from Annie Tierney, also from the 6th. Dear Webster Grove City Council, I am in strong opposition to the proposed cellular antennas at Mossfield. A major research study found decreased memory among teenagers with higher cell phone exposures to the brain after 1 year of repeated exposure. People who begin using cell phones as teenagers have 4 to 5 times higher chance of being diagnosed with brain cancer. 2 major peer-reviewed scientific studies have proven that cell phone radiation can cause cancer. The 2 studies are, number 1, the National Toxicology Program on Cell Phone Radiation, peer-reviewed final report issued November 2018, and the Ramazzini Institute study in Bologna, Italy, completed in August 2018. And then she's got some both of those are attached, and says that wireless communications equipment has never been proven safe for human exposure at levels below heating of human tissue. It does not make any sense why the Webster Grove City Council would approve the installation of more cellular antennas with this knowledge. There are going to be even more students at Hickson next year with the addition of the 6th grade moving into the school. You have the chance to protect all of these kids' brains and development by saying no to more radiation. We are inundated enough with cell phones and radiation. Please protect our children. It is your duty to protect the children, not the cell phone company. Thank you for listening. I know you'll make the right decision. Annie Tierney. Next email is from Robert Workman, sent on the 6th. Hello, my questions for the council. What precautions have you made for children and pregnant women? And what measures have you made for the sensitive group? Thank you, Robert Workman, Certified Building Biology Environmental Consultant. Jody Porter, sent on the 6th. Dear City Council, as a Webster Groves resident with school-aged children planning to eventually attend Hickson Middle School, I urge you to vote no on the installation of 9 new cellular antennas there. There are decades of research showing children and adolescent brains to be particularly vulnerable to the EMF radiation emitted from these towers. At a time when we should be focusing on the health and well-being of our community more than ever, we should pay attention to the science documenting these unregulated safety hazards, and we should not increase exposure of them to our middle schoolers. Protect the brains of our vulnerable adolescents and vote no for more cellular antennas. Next one's from Marissa Zeller, sent today. Dear City Council, as a Webster Groves resident with children in the school district, I oppose the installation of 9 new cellular towers to Hickson Middle School. Claire Delargy, sent today. As a Webster Groves resident with children in the school district, I oppose the installation of 9 new cellular towers to Hickson Middle School. Lauren Bruno, sent today. Dear Webster Groves City Council, I'm writing to voice my strong opposition to the possible installation of 9 more cellular antennas next to Hickson Middle School. I expect I am in the majority, which does not consent to having our children exposed to excessive wireless radiation, which peer-reviewed science has shown to be harmful to the public health and to nature. Children, the ill, and the elderly are more vulnerable, and the proposed proximity of these towers to school-aged children is especially concerning. As a Webster Groves resident with school-aged children planning to eventually attend Hickson Middle School, I urge you to vote no on the installation of 9 new cellular antennas there. At a time when we should be focusing on the health and well-being of our community more than ever, and as European countries are making huge strides to get rid of EMF and Wi-Fi out of their schools, for Webster Groves to ignore decades of research documenting these unregulated safety hazards and to increase exposure of our children to them is unacceptable. I cannot support a city government that would act against the health and welfare of its children and residents in this manner. Protect our vulnerable adolescents and vote no for more cellular antennas. Lindsay Michaud, sent today. As a Webster Groves resident of over 30 years with 2 children in the school district, I oppose the installation of 9 new cellular towers to Hickson Middle School. Please consider the health of our children and future generations and vote no on this matter. Please find a location much further away from a school. Sheila Mitchell, sent today. You have all been elected to represent and protect all of the people, especially the children. From intensive research by hundreds of thousands of wise, informed, well-researched authorities, including my friend Bobby Kennedy Jr., the son of Robert F. Kennedy and a lawyer for Irregulators versus FCC for extreme fraud killing children and our bees, insects, and food supply, Dr. Deborah Davis, Theodoro Scorado, and St. Louis for Safe Technology members and supporters, we demand that you stop now. Any untested technology putting our children and our lives in the greatest jeopardy as 2G, 4G, 5G, dangerous smart meters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My son, 26, experienced a 3-year journey of torture and extreme pain and died a very early death from carrying a 2G phone in his pocket without understanding the true dangers. The pain and loss is only soothed by knowing you protect us now. You must stop the insanity and help citizens survive all untested, toxic, and dangerous life-threatening technologies and industries, or you will see your community suffer and be bankrupted from so many deaths and litigations unimaginable. As Bobby Kennedy Jr. recently stated, if you are alive today, we ask you to join us in saving humanity. Hold faith that you will all join St. Louis for Safe Technology, Environmental Health Trust, Irregulators versus FCC, Bobby Kennedy Jr., Dr. Deborah Davis, and the citizens that trusted and supported you with trust. You would consciously and courageously protect their lives, children, families, communities, and legacy now. Onward and upward for truth, justice, and a much more conscious, healthy community and world. Most sincerely and passionately, a devoted mother grieving the loss of her precious son, Sheila Mitchell. This next one is very small. Maggie Taylor Berkowitz, sent today. I am a lifelong Webster resident and now a mother of soon-to-be 3 children who will be attending Webster schools. I implore you to vote no on the addition of 9 proposed new cell towers at Hickson. Any additional EMF exposure to our children is unacceptable. Laura Welch, sent today. To whom it may concern, as a Webster Groves resident with children in the school district and someone who lives close to Hickson Middle School, I strongly oppose the installation of 9 new cellular towers at Hickson. Please vote no on the addition of these new towers. I do not like the idea of my kids being exposed to additional EMF, which is shown to be especially harmful to children and adolescents. I urge you to vote no. Thank you for your time. Christy Regent, sent today. As a Webster Groves resident with children in the school district, I oppose the installation of 9 new cellular towers to Hickson Middle School. I urge you to please vote no on the addition of 9 cellular towers at Hickson Middle School. As a resident, I don't like the idea of my kids being exposed to additional EMF, which has been shown to be especially harmful to children and adolescents. Hannah Bingaman, sent today. As a Webster Groves resident with children in the school district, I strongly oppose the installation of 9 new cellular towers to Hickson Middle School. Please vote no on the addition of 9 new cellular towers at Hickson Middle School. As a resident, I do not want my kids being exposed to additional EMF, which has been shown to be especially harmful to children and adolescents. This next one is from Catherine Pagorno and was sent today. To the Webster Groves Council. For decades, I had Webster Groves in high esteem until I drove by Hickson School and Rec Center recently, and my heart sank 10 miles. To those in the telecom, cell towers, and the antennas industries, directly or indirectly, I say ignorance of the damage wireless technology causes does not exculpate you. 4G is bad enough, and now we are exposing our children to more, whether 4G or 5G. What for? For faster connections, along with faster physical deterioration, emotional and mental dysfunction, and worse, for faster death of trees and disappearance of birds and insects. About 30% of the population is now experiencing damaging effects from electromagnetic frequencies, whether they engage in the use of the devices or not. Did you know those towers radiate out for miles? There are now 23 towers and 100 antennas within 2 miles of that spot. Imagine the scope of repercussions. Damage from microwave and radio frequency radiation has been known for 40 years. From the Naval Medical Research Institute study of 1971. Add the National Toxicology Program study on cell phone radiation and the Bioinitiative report, which compiled over 1,000 studies by 29 scientists in 10 countries. Please read their summary sheet of conditions associated with radiation, which I am attaching. Also, I am attaching a list of 168 studies on radiation, including effects on fetal and newborn development, on young children, brain and parotid gland tumors, on DNA and 5G effects. This is a repeat story of DDT, asbestos, cigarettes, opioids, glyphosates, etc., all toxic, but touted as safe to suit irresponsible and unconscionable interests. Just like the cell phone manuals, fine print considers their use to constitute radiation pollution, while they warn, do not hold close to your body. Many testimonials exist. One example is that of 6 college students who died of brain tumors, having lived in a dorm next to a cell tower. Now over 200,000 cell tower installers in the US have been hurt or become ill and are walking away from the job. Mr. Modis from the California Brain Tumor Association indicates the wireless devices and antennas have not been tested for safety before put on market. This is the biggest environmental and safety threat of our time. Yet the FCC has conducted no safety tests. How convenient. To not acknowledge the science and alarms sounded by physicians and scientists worldwide, and to operate with no liability while their guidelines are 23 years obsolete. This is unconscionable criminal activity. No wonder they are now being sued big time. In smart places, Wi-Fi is being removed from schools and 5G banned. You have the opportunity and power of saying no more. Be the leaders. Invest in safe and reliable grounded computers, phones, and electronic equipment for your residents, students, and workers. Please oppose wireless radiation for the sake of the children. Stop this insanity. And then she sent attachments. Susan Krieg sent today, please vote no on the addition of 9 cellular towers at Hickson Middle School. As a resident and parent of children in the Webster Groves School District, I don't like the idea of my kids being exposed to additional EMF, which has been shown to be especially harmful to children and adolescents. Joel Bingaman sent today, I would like to state that I oppose the installation of new cellular towers to Hickson Middle School and or other school buildings. As a Webster Groves resident and parent of children attending Webster Groves schools, I am not comfortable with the potential risk presented by cellular towers. While current evidence cannot clearly demonstrate an increased risk from cell towers, several lab studies of animals have shown that there is a potential increased risk. As such, please vote against the installation of these new towers. Exposing our children to even potential increase of risk is not worth it to me. Amy Layton sent today, my husband and I have been looking to possibly move to Webster Groves, partly because of the strong school district. I've looked over some concerning data dealing with these towers. I see that other countries are banning it. I think more research needs to be done before these are put in place. This is the welfare of our children. The very place that should be a safe zone could be harming them with small incremental influences. I would encourage non-biased research to assure this is a good choice. If the jury remains undecided, would it not be smarter to take the safe road and not use kids' schools as a testing ground? Shelley and Edward Huffman sent today. We request that Webster Groves City Council deny the application from DRA Properties, Doug Dolan et al., on the grounds that they do not have insurance to cover them for liabilities associated with the use of these towers. 6 months ago, our family of 5 members, each with a cell phone, had our landline reconnected in our home in Glendale. We have successfully changed our cell phone use to less than half of what it was, and now utilize our AT&T landline and rely on it for emergency use, even if the electricity goes out. We know of at least 10 other families that have done the same, and one friend who has canceled their cell phone completely. We encourage others to do this to limit their own exposure to EMFs and to limit the exposure that each call and text with a cell phone emits to other people, animals, birds, insects, trees, and plant life. Less cell phone use is desirable, and we are seeing a trend of less use. Let's see DRA Properties provide evidence and proof of necessity for our community, not just for their pocketbook, and a contract that they accept all liabilities associated with these cell towers, and that Webster Groves will not be held liable, nor the city council members individually, for neglecting their oath to protect, nor the taxpayers of Webster Groves. We also need to see proof that they are insured for all liabilities associated with these proposed 9 cell towers, so that they can't just run from a bankruptcy with their CEO bonuses, and we are left to content with the certain coming massive legal mess from this unsafe technology. As cell phones do cause cancer, as proven by the US NTP study, and long-term exposure, even at levels below the fraudulent FCC limit of 60 volts per meter, can cause cancer and harm people in many ways that can go unseen for years before they surface and become apparent that the disease has taken hold in the body. And how about property values of the homes all around Mossfield? No one wants a home next to a cell tower. How is this issue being addressed? Who is paying for the loss of property value or the relocation cost of residents in the surrounding areas? Will DRA Properties also accept liability for lawsuits and legal fees when property owners finally see what has happened and sue Webster Groves? You must vote no until proof of insurance covering DRA Properties specifically for all liabilities associated with these proposed cell towers can be seen by the people and the public, and taxpayers can have their say about that. And we want to know who's profiting from this. We want this to be public information. If any council members or their family members are profiting in any way, the public must be informed of this as well. And then our last is from Daryl Barker, and that I believe was also sent today. Dear Webster Groves City Council, please vote no to Bill 9125, a conditional use permit to install 9 new cellular communications antennas on the vacant tower platform at Mossfield Hickson Middle School, 630 South Elm, Webster Groves, Missouri, submitted to the city of Webster Groves by DRA Properties, 343 Kirkwood Road, the DRA Properties representative is Mr. Doug Dolan. On page 8 of the Webster Groves City Plan Commission staff report dated June 1st, 2020, regarding the petition, it is stated this new site will enhance the coverage and capacity of AT&T mobility in the city while maintaining the aesthetics and community standards of the city. The proposed use is therefore regulated by City Code Section 53.170, which pertains to all conditional use permit requests. Per Section 53.173C, the council shall determine whether the proposed wireless communications facility will not substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion, substantially increase fire hazards, adversely affect the character of the neighborhood, adversely affect the general welfare of the community, overtax public utilities. I submit to the council that in light of the peer-reviewed scientific research that exists and has been openly available to the public for many years, which clearly states that harmful biological effects do in fact occur as a result of both short-term and long-term chronic exposure to non-ionizing microwave radiation, that the installation of 9 new microwave emitting antennas on the proposed Moss Field site will increase radiation levels that are inconsistent with item number 4 of the above stated conditional use permit requirements. The City Council is charged with the responsibility of ensuring that the proposed use will not adversely affect the general welfare of the community. To claim that there is no evidence that such harmful health effects exist is a statement made in either ignorance of the facts or an attempt to conceal the truth. Whereas I have personally provided substantial evidence to specific Webster City officials in the form of both peer-reviewed science that shows wireless radiation, including those frequencies utilized by cellular telephone companies, do in fact cause harmful biological effects, as well as video testimony of victims who have suffered from both short-term and long-term exposure to wireless radiation, it is clear that the Webster Groves City Council must vote no to Bill 9125 for a conditional use permit by DRA Properties, Kirkwood, Missouri. Finally, know that children are more vulnerable to harm from cellular telecommunications microwave radiation, and given these 9 proposed antennas are to be added to the already proven biologically damaging radiation levels that currently exist at Hickson Middle School, adding more antennas is surely a move against the general welfare of the community. Below, you'll find a brief selection of peer-reviewed scientific studies that prove that non-ionizing radiation as utilized in wireless equipment products is a public health concern of vast proportion, and deferring to the Telecom Act of 1996 is not becoming of any government who cares about the health and well-being of its children.
Thank you, Jen, for reading all of those, which will all be entered into the public record. Are there any additional questions or comments?
I have one.
Yes.
Sorry, my screen is going black, so I don't know if you guys can hear me or see me, so I'm just gonna guess here. Doug, I was just wondering, what benefit does this bring to the community like Webster Groves if we were to approve this?
Oh, it brings enhanced coverage and capacity. So what's going on in many communities is that the existing cellular network is not robust enough to handle all the cell phones that are on the network, which results without new cell sites in drop calls and drop calls to 911 service and the like. What's even becoming even more important is the use of the rate at which residents of Webster Groves are dropping their landlines. Cell phones become the primary communication tool for the majority of residents in Webster Groves. Well, this is how over 80% of 911 calls are made on cell phones. So keeping a robust network in your community is essential for the health and safety of your residents. So it is the primary way in which people communicate with their emergency responders.
I can add that I got a call today from someone who was grateful that we are considering this because there are so many dead spots in town, and it would improve the ability to use their cell phone.
So is there any other options with reference to location, or Neil, does that then fall back into the you can't decline a location because of concerns of hazard or safety or what have you?
So we can indicate that, again, we have control over placement and location, as long as, again, you're not making these decisions based upon emissions. So if our decision-making process is that list, federal law has preempted us and has said, as long as it's within whatever the federal standards are, it's acceptable and doesn't meet that standard of somehow being against the public welfare. So getting to your question, we can control where it goes. And again, I'm not advocating for or against, but this is an existing tower that's been there and has been used as a tower in the past historically. Am I right on that, Mara?
It was used in the past from approximately 2008 until 2014.
Okay. So the question, Karen, would be where else would one go without having to erect a new tower or running into the same problem just, on another street, as it were?
Any other questions or comments? If not, let's close this public hearing, and Neil, could you do so?
Yes, I would now move for the admission of certain exhibits, and it's rather long, so bear with me. Number one, the City Plan Commission staff report by Danny Jadusa, who's a planner for meeting date June 1st of 2020. The applicant's written statement from DRA Properties LLC received January the 7th of 2020. The applicant's Exhibit A dated March of 2020. A letter of support from John O'Connor, Director of National Communications Coordination Branch, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Is there anyone else?
No, it's you, David.
That's on David's,
It's David.
you need to
Okay.
mute.
Sorry,
you're in
my
there
computer
twice.
went black. Twice. Can you hear
Okay,
me now?
Neil, go ahead and
Yeah.
finish, Well.
Draft minutes from June 1st, 2020 Plan Commission meeting. Emails from the following. Daryl Barker dated June 14th, June 22nd, June 23rd, June 25th, June 27th, July 6th, and July 7th, all of 2020, including attached articles and a PowerPoint. Annie Tierney's letter dated June 14th, 2020, and additional response on June 15th, 2020. Diane Sperber dated June 27th, 2020. Patricia Toko dated July 6th, 2020. Annie Tierney dated July 6th, 2020. Robert Workman dated July 6th, 2020. Jody Porter dated July 6th, 2020. Marissa Zeller dated July 7th, 2020. Claire Delargy dated July 7th, 2020. Lauren Bruno dated July 7th, 2020. Lindsay Michaud dated July 7th, 2020. Sheila Mitchell dated July 7th, 2020. Sheila Mitchell dated July 7th, 2020. Maggie Taylor Berkowitz dated July 7th, 2020. Laura Welch dated July 7th, 2020. Christy Regent dated July 7th, 2020. Hannah Bingaman dated July 7th, 2020. Catherine Cogorno dated July 6th, 2020 and July 7th, 2020 with attachments. Susan Krieg dated July 7th, 2020. Joel Bingaman dated July 7th, 2020. Ann Layton dated July 7th, 2020. And Shelley and Edward Huffman dated July 7th, 2020. In addition, I'd ask for the admission of the Director of Planning and Development's PowerPoint before City Council tonight, July the 7th of 2020. And finally, the zoning code of the City of Webster Groves. I'd move for the admission of all those exhibits.
And with that, we'll declare the public hearing closed and we'll go to Bill 9125. Councilwoman Bliss, could you call for the first and second reading?
Yes, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9125.
Second.
Okay, hold up. I'm pulling that up again. Just a minute. This would be Bill 9125, first reading, an ordinance granting a conditional use permit to DRA Properties LLC.
I think Neil froze.
As an accessory
Neil, you're
utility facility use
frozen.
at Moss Field on an approximately 17. You got me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So to install 9, did you get me there? Cellular antennas atop an existing light pole as an accessory utility facility use at Moss Field on an approximately 17.30 acre tract of land at 630 South Elm Avenue in the A4 7,500 square foot residence district and matters related thereto.
All right. Are there any questions or issues? Then let's go to that second reading, Neil.
Bill 9125, second reading. An ordinance granting a conditional use permit to DRA Properties LLC to install 9 cellular antennas atop an existing light pole as an accessory utility facility use at Moss Field on an approximately 17.30 acre tract of land at 630 South Elm Avenue in the A4 7,500 square foot residence district and matters related thereto.
All right. Remarks of visitors. Is it Jennifer or Katie?
It is my lucky day, Jennifer.
And Katie, how many do we have?
Not too many. We're checking here. 4.
4. Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Ready.
Okay, the first one is from Hannah Kaufman and was received on the 4th. Hello, I have concerns about resolution 2020-24 authorizing the city manager to purchase 4 new police vehicles. The American Public Health Association has found that police violence is a public health issue, with law enforcement violence, including death, injury, trauma, and stress, often disproportionately affecting marginalized populations. The American Public Health Association calls on governments to allocate funding from law enforcement agencies to community-based programs that address violence and harm without criminalizing communities, including restorative justice programs. Webster Groves in our country is in the middle of another public health crisis, COVID-19. The response to the COVID-19 crisis should not be to increase the resources for the police department. The council's most recent goals published on the website include a 2018-19 goal, explore additional housing options such as multifamily housing and affordable housing. 2018-19 goal, address and correct through ordinance changes housing issues that negatively affect Webster Groves homes and neighborhoods. If police violence most impacts the marginalized populations, such as people in poverty or people of color, increased police spending does not serve the same people that you have the goal to create affordable housing. Your statement of diversity, equity, and inclusion says Webster Groves welcomes and supports the unique and individual qualities of each resident, business owner, employee, and visitor to our community. We are committed to promoting diversity, respectful conduct, and equitable service. We strive to be an inclusive place for all, and we condemn discrimination. In all that we do as a city, we pledge to treat everyone with equity and without bias, regardless of their race, creed, religion, national origin, gender identity, marital status, familial status, citizenship, sexual orientation, age, income, physical appearance, or ability. Increasing police funds is not shown to lead to equitable service or respectful conduct at all. I urge you not to purchase 4 new police vehicles and instead use that money to assist people vulnerable to the ravaging effects of COVID-19. Next one's from Joan McGivney. It's sent on the 6th. Says regarding follow-up on June 16th meeting. As I listened to your thoughtful discussion during the last meeting about the Aquatic Center, I understand your votes and thank you for your consideration about opening the pool this summer. I thought the idea that Mayor Welch suggested that Director Scott Davis contact other neighboring cities to see if a plan could be implemented for Webster residents to use their pools was an excellent idea. As Director Davis stated, August is usually a lower attendance month for pools, so other cities may welcome our participation. I hope something can be worked out for our citizens. Thank you for your service to our community. Next one is from Dave Buck, sent today. Mayor and City Council, 5 quick remarks. Number 1, I was wrong and you were right to make the difficult but smart and safe decision to close the pool for the summer. Thank you, Scott and Council. Number 2, I was wrong and you were right to cancel or postpone the parade, carnival, and fireworks this past weekend. Thank you, Scott, Steve, and Council. And please see below. Our family loved participating in the reverse parade and home decoration contest with our child garden of peace. We didn't win, but that's not the point. We had fun and supported our great city. Number 3, to me, it takes humility, empathy, and courage to truly listen, respect, and understand the harsh criticisms of arrogance, apathy, and inaction from the youth at Blackburn Park against City Council, the school board, the police department, and the entire Webster Groves community. Thank you for starting the process of bridging and closing the divide, healing their wounds, and coming together to find common ground and agree on a corrective course of tangible actions. 4, I think SG Collaborative is doing a great job overall and in their current public input sessions on their 6 identified opportunity areas. But to me, 4 of these areas are wants and only 2 of them are real and urgent community needs, that being housing and diversity. And to me, housing really means affordable housing, not for the affluent in our community, but for lower, low, and poverty families. Number 5, over the past 20 years, Webster's Black population has basically been cut in half from 13 to 14% to just over 7% and falling. Thus, while the celebration of North Webster's past is appreciated by all, we need to dramatically shift focus to the present and stop the hemorrhaging and loss of Black families due to gentrification and to the future and attract new Black families to our city. Because if we don't, we risk becoming an all-white Webster sooner rather than later, which would be very bad and sad for all of us. Peace, Dave. And then he submitted a photo of his garden. The last one is from Mike Blaze, submitted today. My compliments to the Webster Groves Police Force for keeping our city safe, quickly responding to numerous calls for service, and being respectful of our residents. In a time of global pandemic and national crises, the police are under increasing pressure to perform their jobs justly and heroically. Our leaders rarely question expenditures to their department. While I understand the need to cycle vehicles to keep their fleet maintained and dependable, I also see an opportunity to respond to the areas of concern in the community. Tonight's agenda includes the purchase of 4 new police vehicles and 1 new parks vehicle at a cost of roughly $250,000. A considerable budget shortfall is expected this year and probably next due to the pandemic and lack of sales tax dollars. This represents a considerable investment that might be best postponed or invested elsewhere, regardless of when these funds were appropriated. The city of Webster Groves has a rare opportunity to stand behind the Black Lives Matter movement to bring justice, healing, and freedom to our African American citizens by reappropriating these funds to programs and needs in North Webster. This is the meaning behind the slogan, defund the police, to redistribute money that might be considered excessive and or unnecessary to an already high-performing police force. You might ask your police officers what they think. I imagine you will find them supportive of a better use of these funds. While these vehicles may have been approved for purchase under previous budgets, priorities are changing with the pandemic and cries for racial reform. Asking why can't we do both sends the wrong message to our African American constituents. We post signs in our front yards, Black Lives Matter. We march and protest throughout the St. Louis area and in Webster Groves demanding change. We condemn racial inequality in all aspects of society. We remove monuments to those who fought for slavery. We work to be anti-racist. But what are we willing to do in our own community to say to the rest of the world, we mean it? Are we willing to be leaders in charge, or are we just putting on a show that will end when things return to normal? Some of us don't want that normal to return. We dream of change and look to our leaders to make it happen. Are you as leaders in Webster Groves willing to take this opportunity and make a monetary gesture to our African American community while doing no harm to our police force? I challenge you to reconsider the purchase of these vehicles.
All right, thank you. And I'm just going to make one comment, which we don't do about these letters that come forward, but since a number of people have brought up the police cars, I should mention that they come out of a different fund called the Capital Improvement Fund. This is a 1/4-cent sales tax that can only be used for capital purchases. You can't shift that money into operations or salaries or something else. And so that 5-year careful planning is a planning over that 1/4-cent sales tax. So we just need to consider that. All right, next is new business, of which we don't have anything at the moment. And our next is the consent agenda. Does anyone care to remove anything from the consent agenda? If not, Councilwoman Arnold, could you call for its approval?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welch?
Yes. All right, we don't have any appointments to boards and commissions, but we're really going to do something rather unusual this evening. You know, this pandemic and this Zooming has caused us to celebrate Steve Wiley in a very different way. And we're kind of lucky because we have 2 weeks, Steve, with a variety of things to say goodbye to you. But tonight we are going to recognize Steve. We have a number of speakers who are here this evening. We've got a little something for you. And I'm just going to start out because I want to lay the context and a little bit of background about Steve. And then we have a couple of folks who are going to speak about him this evening. But I want to start out by saying that Steve is the story of a good man. He's a good man and one who has crossed our paths in Webster Groves for almost 19 years and for whom we are grateful. Steve Wiley was hired by our city after an extensive national search where he was the city manager of Safety Harbor, Florida. He joined us with his lovely wife, Anne Marie, who I hope is around somewhere and can wave, his daughters, Danielle and Hannah, and baby son Lucas, who was a baby when he came in October 2001. And Webster Groves brought him closer to his family home in Decatur, and it also brought him pretty close to his big love in life, which is baseball. He was much closer to the Cubs and much closer to the Cardinals by relocating here in Webster than he was in Safety Harbor. In almost 19 years with us, Steve has caused so many positive changes in our community and accomplishments that has left us as a really sought after community to live in with great stability and so many amenities that are desirable. And I want to just give you some background in some of the things that Steve has done over the years. And then we have all these other folks who can speak to him too. Steve really spent years ensuring that this city, our city, was financially stable. When he arrived, the reserve position was really poor. We were struggling all the time to try to balance the budget. We hardly adequately paid our employees. We didn't have any capital planning. Things were not great. And in the middle of the recession, we have also, after he arrives, we have this recession of 2008 that hits us. So it's Steve's careful planning and careful management of our funds that's led us to the stability that we have today, with a really good reserve account of close to $11 million, just careful and prudent planning. And over the years, those of us who've been around with Steve for a long time, we have watched him literally pay attention to every single expenditure, like it all came out of his wallet. I used to say, Steve acts like every nickel in this community is his. He was so very, very careful. We watched him shave off $100 here, $1,000 there, to try to make this budget balance, which he did. And this 5-year capital planning that Steve has done is a wonder for us. Thanks to Steve, we have planning for the next 5 years. We've got careful replacement of equipment, and we can weather ourselves through all sorts of crises. And there are a lot of other accomplishments. Steve oversaw the careful renovation of all of our major city parks. They all came under Steve's oversight. He oversaw the additions to the recplex of the fitness center as well as the meeting rooms. The playing fields are in good shape. Some of us have been around long enough to remember when Memorial Field was full of holes and glass and shards, and kids could hardly go out there and play. And now it's a great field, even with irrigation. The city's business districts have bloomed, and they really exemplify the care that we now have of so many parts of our community. Steve's oversight and careful management of grants and bond issues. Today, with that oversight, our streets are better than they have ever been. We used to be the pothole capital of St. Louis, and now we have very, very healthy driving surfaces. Lots of federal grants. Under Steve, we've had federal grants that have resurfaced Kirkham and Grant Road and Elm and I-44, all of that. And today our snow removal is the envy of many cities, partially because of Steve's regard for employees, but also because the capital planning has allowed us to have good snow plowing equipment. One of Steve's major accomplishments to me is that he has always advocated for good employees. He's taken care of good employees and staff, which is the key to good municipal services, always focusing on providing adequate salaries and benefits to keep a skilled, experienced staff. And somehow through working budget magic, always our employees have received a yearly salary increase. Recently, they've joined the loggers pension plan. So our staff now retires with a pension. And I can add, there were times when I saw Steve with a great deal of sadness with an employee who had borrowed on the 401k. And when they retired, they literally had about $20,000 to their name. And that sort of thing really bothered Steve, and it was changed. I'm going to also mention something else, and that's educational zoning. It was controversial, but it was brave, productive, and a positive step forward. And today, we could be proud of this because the university can renovate, they can make changes without the constant need for public hearings. They had 53 CUPs, which meant 106 public hearings. And so constantly the university was before us with something that caused controversy. And now today also, all those homeowners have a boundary around them and there is peace. So I have a few other things I want to say, but I'll end up with those things. And we have a number of speakers with us tonight, people who spent a lot of time working with Steve, and they're here to speak tonight, and I'm going to call on them. And the first is Debbie Sahlberg. Debbie, where are you? Debbie, unmute.
Okay, I unmuted me. Well, Jerry, if I'd known that you were going to say all this, I probably wouldn't have prepared any comments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Good evening. You know, COVID certainly has changed the way that we mark milestones, births, deaths, weddings, and retirements. I'm glad for this opportunity to speak about on the occasion of Steve's retirement. Although I had met Steve earlier, I only got to know him when I was deciding to run for council. From that time on, I felt we were like kindred spirits, dedicated to public service, able to see the big picture and the long game. Once I was elected, Steve served as a guide through the maze of budgeting and other difficult parts of running a city. I looked forward to the briefing calls before council meetings. Over the years, we shared good times as well as some uncomfortable meetings, AKA educational zoning, worried as well as laughed together, and worked hard to make Webster Groves a better community. I learned so much about leadership and government, good government, working with Steve and watching him in action over these years. Steve, I cannot thank you enough for your guidance and leadership. The city of Webster Groves owes you a great deal. You've built a foundation that will help the city navigate and address the problems we are experiencing now and move successfully into the future. I wish you the very best retirement possible. I hope that this new adventure you are embarking on is just wonderful. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Debbie. Joan Esserman. Joan.
Unmute.
Sorry. Madam Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to do this. When I heard about Steve retiring, I immediately tried to think of some way to inject myself into being invited to any parties that were goodbye parties. And since I've kind of been out of the picture for a while, I thought that I wouldn't get to do that. So I was scheming about how I'd be invited. And then we found that we can't party after all. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity. I've been with Steve from the beginning, and by the beginning, I really mean the beginning. I was moderating a panel of applicants for this job that Steve was on. And so keeping in mind that I was supposed to be very objective and to keep my thumb off the scale, I did the best I could, but secretly I was plugging for Steve. And the reasons for that turned out to be true because if it was just the resumes and the applicants' different qualifications, it would have been kind of equal. There were a lot of people that really brought a lot to the thing. But it was a matter of character to me from what I saw, the way Steve responded to the probing and the questions. It sounded like this was a person who would be flexible, and he was also very pragmatic. And he was just kind of himself that day, and you just felt like he was the real thing. So I was really glad that the city had picked him back in the time. And it seems like those qualities, the most important one are the working with 3 different constituencies with this job. When you're in that job, not only are you juggling elected officials, also staff, also citizens, it's a very, very difficult position. And I think that Steve has really shown in the qualities of character that have really been successful in juggling those 3 roles, which are very difficult. because sometimes you have to be a teacher. Sometimes with us elected officials, we have some really good ideas that seem really very common sense, but they may not actually work out with somebody knowing from professional experience. So Steve, a lot of times is a teacher and a guidance for us. But he also has handled it in a way where you feel like he's a partner, and that we're all working together for the worth of this city and the betterment of the city. And I think that he really cares about the city. Besides him being a resident, he just, above and beyond his professional scope, there's nobody that has a doubt that he doesn't care about the city. So enough said about that. I think his job operates behind the scenes, and the people in the city don't really realize when the mayor was enumerating all the things that made Webster what it is. I think we owe Steve Wiley a lot of thanks for that. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Bud Bellamo.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, over the past 4 years, I've gotten to know Steve and always enjoyed our conversations when he would call on the day of the council meeting. Sometimes we'd talk about agenda items, and sometimes we'd just chat for a while about our families, his son's baseball games, or the Cards, or the Blues. I found him to be a nice, down-to-earth guy. But I also learned over the years how he operates and manages our great city of Webster Groves with outstanding results. To name just a couple, our city has been listed a top 10 safest city in Missouri by multiple sources for many years. And it has become a destination city for our amenities and businesses. And one other thing, and this ties into what Jerry said a little bit ago. He spends money like it's his own, because there's, as one politician once said, there's nothing easier than spending other people's money. Well, Steve doesn't look at it that way. He looks at it as his own. And he's a very significantly efficient manager of taxpayer dollars. I did some checking on this with about 8 or 9 communities around us, neighboring cities. And Webster Groves has the lowest per capita expenditures than our neighboring cities, beating some by hundreds and others by thousands of dollars per capita. It's unbelievable. And I've got the numbers if anybody ever wants to see them. But we are by far the lowest in capita spending. Lastly, I was asked, as were others, to identify attributes I would like to see in candidates who will apply to replace Steve. And I listed these: a proven leader, a good listener, open-minded, organizer, honest, personable and friendly, respected and respectful of others, proactive, pragmatic, decisive, and humble, and also a good steward. After I wrote them out, I looked at it, I read them back to myself, and I realized I had identified Steve. I know you enjoy your retirement, Steve, and how much you are looking forward to spending more time with your family, but I also know that you are the kind of guy who will stay busy and involved with many things. So let me put it this way, if I could use a Mark Twainism: retiring is a good thing. I have done it many times myself. I wish you and your family all the best, Steve, and please come back and see us now and then. Take care. Best wishes.
Thanks, Bud.
Thank you, Bud. Jeannie Kirkton.
Good evening, everybody, and congratulations to the new council members. And Steve, congratulations on your retirement. You know, I had this fleeting thought for a moment that you might have retired sooner had I been on council longer. I hope I didn't give you too many gray hairs when I bounded into your office unannounced or called you about this, that, or the other. You were always made time to talk through whatever prompted my visits. And you were diplomatic, mostly, even if we didn't agree on my point of view. I remember my first encounter with you was because you always met with candidates prior to their elections. And during that meeting, I told you if elected, I thought it was probably best to serve only one term. And you paused and you said, well, there's something to be said for continuity. And I thank you for your continuity, for persevering through times of calm and challenge and change. Being a city manager is a balancing act and a tough one at that. Your leadership and your commitment to Webster has been a steadying force. And I also will tell you that when my husband Larry retired, his to-do list included teaching me how to properly load the dishwasher. So you may want to consider an alternative retirement plan. But seriously, Steve, I've considered you a friend as well as a colleague. And I wish you happiness and all good things in this next chapter in your life. And may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. And when you come to the fork in the road, take it. Best wishes, Steve.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Frank Janowski. Can't hear you. Can't hear you, Frank. But we can't hear you.
Yeah, right.
Oh dear.
Tell him lower left-hand corner of the screen, unmute.
Yeah. It looks like he's unmuted.
Uh-oh.
He actually doesn't even have a microphone, so he probably has to go to the bottom corner potentially and add the little arrow next to his mute of selecting a microphone.
Okay. All right, while you fool around with that, Frank, we're going to get Tony Hunt. Tony?
Hello. I unmuted. Well, thank you, Mayor and City Council, for this opportunity to talk tonight in tribute to Steve Wiley. I know Steve's not one to enjoy all this, but I think he might be enjoying this a little bit. So, since my first introduction to Steve during my interview and subsequent appointment to the City Council, I can't tell you how impressed I was by your professionalism, your affection for the city of Webster Groves, and your quiet, chill demeanor, especially when you knew that you were going to have 5 women on your council. I know you were a little shaky about that. Steve was never one that wanted to be the face of the city. He left that to the elected officials or the professional staff he directed. He seems to prefer to sit in the background looking satisfied as capital projects were completed, balanced budgets were submitted, or having department heads report any successes. And he was always calm and resolute when he had to present challenges to the council for their discernment, or at least you made it seem that way. You did your job and you did it well. Your staff and city council may have had times where they didn't agree with you on issues, but you were always a good listener and you never hesitated to give opinions and recommendations honestly. And for that, I was always most grateful. And if we went against your advice, which was rare, you carried out the wishes of the council dutifully and never once said, I told you so, even if you were right. I'll miss knowing that you'll be there, Steve, keeping the city running efficiently and professionally. You're very wise, you're very thoughtful, you are a true leader, and I always appreciated your great sense of humor. You truly have the best laugh when you get tickled. It's that booming, ho, 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 ho. It's a belly laugh that's genuine and real. And sometimes just hearing you laugh maybe meant I needed to take a step back and think about what was really important. I'll miss calling you whenever I have a quick question or stopping by for a chat. Thank you, Steve, for all you have done to make Webster Groves a great place to live, work, and play. You have left the city in a better place than when you came, And I hope to still see you around town in the crowds at the parade, perhaps at a meeting or just at the grocery store. You will be missed, but I know you and Anne Marie will enjoy your next adventure, and I wish you both well.
Yay.
Thank you.
And Frank, we don't know if you can speak yet. No. But so we're going to skip over you because we do have an additional person over here who submitted a remarks of visitors today that we have to include. Scott Davis, can you give us your remarks of visitors?
Good evening. This morning I had my one-on-one meeting with Steve, my weekly meeting, and we were talking about his upcoming retirement. And he mentioned that tonight's council meeting, the way he counts it, is his 1,040th meeting. And if you include budget meetings and special sessions and such, he said he's probably well over 1,200 council meetings in his long and distinguished career. And I just want to put that in perspective for everyone. Let's not even talk about his total years of service in his career. Just focus on those days spent in council meetings. Tonight was your first council meeting, and you sat on a council meeting every single day from now until May 2nd, 2023. Steve still has you beat. Steve spent 20 times more days in council meetings than the first U.S. Continental Congress was in session at only 51 days. He served more days in council meetings than JFK served as president at 1,036 days. Total council meetings and special meetings, he's been there longer than the active Korean War at only 1,127 days. And he spent more amount of time than Forrest Gump crisscrossing the country jogging for 1,171 days. And most importantly, Steve has spent exactly one more day in council meetings than he has told me stories about his cabin in Tennessee. Steve, I wish tonight's meeting, your 1,040th and last, was a regular in-person meeting. I feel cheated that your staff and the citizens of Webster Groves don't get the opportunity to stand up and applaud you tonight for your loyalty, your longevity, and your leadership. And though we're all at home watching on Zoom, if you pause and listen just close enough, you'll probably still be able to hear us rise up and give you a round of applause.
All right, let's see if Frank's in. Nope, he is not in. Jennifer, you found that quote today that you absolutely have to read.
All right. Well, back, the East-West Gateway used to, when they put out their newsletter, they still have a quote, but they used to have kind of funny quotes that I keep behind me just to remind me of city stuff. And so one of my favorites is, "It is my understanding that public officials who fail to live a pure and blameless life will, when they die, be immediately cast into Hades, where they will be forced to sit through zoning hearings for all eternity." And that's from the former mayor of Chattanooga. I just, you know, no more zoning hearings.
No more zoning hearings. Well, Steve, we care a lot about you. You're leaving behind a very functional and a stable city, and we've got a new firehouse coming and exciting an exciting redevelopment project. And you know, people's biggest assets here, their homes have been preserved. Lots and lots of good stuff. And we sit here in luxury because our foundation is so solid. Thanks to you. Thanks very much. We have a proclamation for you, which we're not going to read tonight, and we will deliver to you tomorrow. But we are proclaiming July 17th as Steve Wiley Day in the city of Webster Groves. Yay!
Thank you.
And I believe something has been delivered to you for you to open tonight.
Yes.
It's the meeting minutes from all those meetings, Steve.
You know, I actually still have all of those. I've got every agenda since the first meeting in a file in my drawer. I've got every agenda since 2001. How ridiculous is that?
Poor Anne Marie.
Oh, wow. Man, I don't know if you could put Cubs and Cardinals on the same.
Nice.
Well, thank you. Who dreamed this up? That's fantastic. And it says 2001 to 2020. That's great. That is-
Mayor, we're going to get Frank on the phone real quick if you give us just a minute.
Yeah, we can do that. And Steve, if you have anything you want, that's Marilyn Bradley did that for you, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
It's all Marilyn Bradley. Yeah.
Wow.
This is all pretty good for a guy with sitting in his kitchen with a necktie and short pants on.
I was wondering
If
about
you
that.
have, Steve, if you have anything you'd like to say, feel free.
I ironed the front of my shirt. I think this is how you dress when you go in the coffin. I think.
Don't worry about the mom.
No, you guys took all the good stuff. We had a lot of fun with. I appreciate all the guests on here. We had a lot of fun, which explains why almost none of you ran for re-election. But yeah, almost 19 years and 40 in total. I've worked for 29 people here and 40 as a manager and 60 in a manager's office over all these years and 71.4% of the time it was good. They give degrees for this stuff, but it's real simple. Management is a lot about putting out fires and so forth, but really you just try to create a culture and exhibit some leadership and hire good people and let them work and be supportive and I've been so fortunate with that. All the department directors you have here are terrific. You should don't fritter that away. It's a wonderful bunch. There's people in this organization that truly represent the best their generation has to offer. I've worked with Dale and Dale Curtis and Joanne and Katie all for so long, and everybody's always so supportive. The leadership throughout the departments and of course the people in the field. I can't do anything. You hire experts to do their jobs. You keep an eye on it. They teach you everything, and you know a lot about it. A little about a lot of things, and that's how it goes. And again, it's just about creating a culture. It's here. It's ingrained. I don't think it will change as long as we don't tromp on their spirits. The field people, of course, are the boots on the ground, and they're always at their best in a crisis. Of course, when the house is on fire, when the roads go bad in the middle of the night, when the bad guy needs caught, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a wonderful place to work, and I'm muttering because Joanne told me I didn't have to prepare a speech. I was whining about how do you get 40 years into the kind of thing. She said, just ramble because sometimes you actually make sense when you do that. So that's so I took that to heart, so I wouldn't have any stress today about this. And but just thank you all. The councils have been so supportive here. Again, those 29 people, two of you only for a short period of time, but the culture of the council changed a lot from 20 years ago also, and the decorum they have and the courtesy to each other, the respect allows us to do business, and you can't accomplish much if you're just fighting all the time. We don't do that, and it's been so wonderful for the city and to watch it. It's obviously a good town, all that. And great place. And I never thought I'd spend half my career in one spot, but your kids like the schools, you leave them in the schools, the community's treating you well, and I've always been treated well. I've been treated overly well here, actually. And on top of that, I just say thanks to my family because you come home grouchy and they don't understand and you don't want to talk about it anymore because it's probably something that happened during the day. And of course that happens on occasion, and they put up with it and allow me to relax when I get here and don't grind on me. And we've all had so much fun in the town. Just one last thing I've never said in a public meeting that I want to get these 2 words on the record, and that's my dad. Because I come from farmers and factory workers, and he really couldn't afford to support me the way he did, which allowed me to get here. And so I just wanted to recognize him on the public record. Thank you.
Here's Frank.
All right.
All right.
Hi, Frank.
Hi,
All
Frank.
right, well, I'm sorry for the difficulties here. New office, new house. It's good to see the old faces. It's been a while, and first time I've broken out a button-down shirt and a sport coat in 5 months. So thanks, Steve. I had the pleasure to work with Steve for many years as a resident on various issues, to include the educational zoning that Jerry had mentioned, as a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, and most recently as a member of the City Council. Steve, in my opinion, is a person of the utmost integrity, respectful to all, ethical, and trustworthy. Steve has an approachable character that allows people to bring issues to the community. Steve is a professional who placed the interest of the whole community as his priority. He is a leader who is not afraid to surround himself with strong, talented people, and instilled with them the whole community priority. What I also loved about Steve, he was a dedicated family man. Steve balanced his work ethic and time with family in an exemplary manner. Through Steve's experience and leadership, we had a well-run and well-managed governmental entity that has added substantial value to this community, as mentioned by others. He has given sage and honest advice to the city councils he has worked with. Because of Steve's experience and honesty in giving his opinion, the members of the city council had been given sound advice when tackling tough issues. He always brought the best interests of the community and long-term consequences to the discussion. And very importantly, we have great financial reserves because of Steve's talents, the mayor mentioned, and others. I also observed Steve as a mentor to the city staff. He obviously wanted people to grow in their position. Because Steve is a confident and caring leader, he leaves this community in great shape, both financially and in its department heads. Steve never forgot that he had a family, and he made sure they were not ignored. As a father, I know that Steve really enjoyed those out-of-town sports trips, and I'm glad you took them. Steve will be missed by Webster Groves. He is the epitome of a faithful public servant. His shoes will be hard to fill. I want to wish him a long and satisfying retirement. Steve, you and your family have earned it. Congratulations.
Thank you, Frank.
And with that, if we all had a Budweiser in hand, glass of...
It won't be long.
I figured.
I don't know, Jerry, if any of the department directors would like to say something. I have just a couple of words.
Please.
I just want to say that this is very hard for me because Steve has been the best boss I've ever had. I have been in Webster Groves for over 13 years. And as some of you know, I don't stay that long generally in a position, but this is my home. And he's made it that way because he makes it so easy to work for him. And as Frank said, he truly is a mentor. I mean, he's allowed me and the other department directors to constantly grow and expand our skill sets. And I can say under his leadership in those 13 years, I've gotten 3 certifications, you know, just because I've gone on my own and studied and stuff like that. But he was always very supportive. And of course, he did tease me a few times about the extra little initial behind my name. But he was just always great. And I could always walk into his office, even if I was having a bad day, and he'd listen to me, even if it was a personal matter. And I'm going to miss that tremendously because, like I said, he was the best boss, is the best boss I've ever had, and one of my best friends. That's it.
Nice.
Thank you.
All right. Steve, we'll party when things get better and we can all get together. Believe me, this group that is here is going to celebrate you.
Unless,
of course, he leaves for Tennessee and we never see him again.
Not if they find out I'm a Democrat. That could.
Oh,
Is that on the
Tennessee if they find out that out? Okay. So are we all ready to say cheers? And Steve, we still have 10 days or so that we can haunt you with all kinds of thank yous and words and
That would be 8 days.
8 days that we have to haunt you with.
So Steve, are you gonna change your cell phone number?
No. I'm gonna lose my email address though.
Uh-oh. New email.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you. We'll miss you. We'll miss you.
Yes, we will.
We really will.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
I'll leave and then you can all go. I'll go first.
Okay, you do.
Go get that Budweiser.
All right.
Somebody make a motion to adjourn.
Oh.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.